a little over 100 years ago, men and women didn't really interact. And when they did, it was all about getting down the aisle. But as the times have changed and our society evolves, we've created more and more opportunities for the genders to mix. And when they do, you have an opportunity for a little complication to arise. And that sticky part of friendships between men and women is what we're talking about today. We look at the history of how men and women used to interact, and then dig into what the science says about male and female friendships. All to answer the question at the core of every 90s rom-com: can men and women be just friends? That's what you're in for today on Impolite Society.
You're listening to Impolite Society with Laura and Rachel.
Oh, hey, it's the drums! The drums are playing us in.
Or, wait, is it the pounding of 1,000 broken hearts? Because today, in Impolite Society, we are talking relationships.
And when they go wrong.
Exactly. So this is Impolite Society. We are the podcast where we ask the questions that people do not talk about in polite society. I'm Laura.
I'm Rachel.
And together we are your dynamic duo hosts. And this one, I think it's a little bit of a taboo. I mean, sure, it's the plot of every romantic comedy from the 90s you've ever seen, but it's also something that we're kind of afraid to face in the light of day, because today we are talking about friendship.
Friendship.
And specifically friendship across gender lines.
Ruh-roh. This is where it starts to get dicey.
And it is the age-old question that America has been trying to answer ever since Harry met Sally. Can men and women really be friends? Or at least, can they be friends without getting it on?
Does every single male and female best friends that you see, are they secretly wanting to bone? Are they wanting to get down on each other?
And I think there's some interesting dichotomy going on right now in our culture about this. So on one hand, we've got the fact that it is the plot of every romantic comedy ever. And of course, the entire show of Friends that tells us every friendship that we have with another person that's not your gender has the potential to be the love of your life. But there's this other side, this other narrative that says that in our very modern, equal society, it's super easy for men and women to be friends. And God, you were just so binary and heteronormative for thinking otherwise.
Yes, that's why we should all be wearing gender minimizing jumpsuits. Just hide our genders underneath that, shave our heads, and then we will really be equals.
I feel like that's kind of the future that some people are hurtling towards. But
oh my gosh, can you imagine you take a lover and you don't know what's going on down there until you take it to the bedroom and you're just like,
I don't want to live in that world.
Unzip the gender minimizing jumpsuit and you're like,
oh,
that's a surprise.
It's like Christmas every day.
It's like a gender reveal in your bedroom. It's what I was hoping for.
Blue confetti everywhere.
As opposed to when it's not and you have to pretend to be happy in front of the party that you're throwing and everybody knows you're not happy, including the baby. It'll know when it grows up. Don't worry, dads. Every daughter knows.
We're living kind of an interesting time, I think, where society can hold these two completely opposing views at the same time with absolute conviction and fever. And I just want to know, what's the truth? Can men and women really be friends?
That's a very good question, because you come in and it's almost like the two sides that are competing here are the idealist and the realist, because in an ideal world, it shouldn't matter. It should all be based on mutual attraction and who you're romantically interested in. And if that's not the case, like, oh, shoot, oh, well, it's fine. Continue on. But unfortunately, the real world does not work that way, where whether it's because men can't control themselves or because we were fed all of those rom-coms growing up, that we just can't shake this idea that all these cross-sexual friendships are just lusting after each other. And every girl knows it. Every girl knows not to trust your boyfriend's girl best friend. That never, ever has ended well in the history of humanity.
We will dig into that. Hot takes coming.
Yes.
But before we get into that, Rachel, do you have a lot of male friends? And has it ever gotten a little complicated?
Today, I do not have hardly any male friends. All of my friends that are male are in relation of couples and therefore not real men. They are extensions of their women in their lives, and that's how they exist in my life. But I did have some rockier patches when I was younger, and it did shape a lot of my expectations going into friendships, where in high school, I did have male friends. And one of the quintessential stories that just really put me off from being friends with guys in general and holding them at an arm's length was there was this guy, and we were like good buddies. He was in my friend group. We would like hang out and pass notes. Everybody passed notes in high school.
Sure.
And I should have seen it coming, I guess, but I was young and naive, and I was a teenager, so I didn't think any man would ever be attracted to me or be interested in me, because I was like, I'm so hideous. But I really did try to lay the groundwork, though. I used to sign off on the notes, love you like a brother, like, you know, you're like my brother. But then one day, one of the notes he passed me had a love poem, and it was in like an English class. And I opened it and I just crumpled it up and threw it away instantly, because I knew that it was going to really ruin our friendship. I just remembered like the heart sinking feeling of being like, oh my God, this is not going to go well.
I think you've just told the tale of millions of people. Millions of women who were like, oh God, and millions of men who were like, I pine.
Well, to be fair, I've been friend zoned as well. So that I might say that story for further into the show. How about you, Laura? How do you have a lot of male friends? What's your take on cross-gender friendships?
Same thing. I don't have any male friends that are not then attached to the primary women in my life or the primary men in my life. So the men that I'm friends with are the spouses of my good friends and then the friends of my husband. So I don't even live in that world anymore. And I think that for me, yeah, it has gotten complicated, but not so much in high school. Maybe there's like a dabble of that, but that's just part of the high school experience. So I just discount it. You know what I mean? I feel like all my friends in high school were like potential. I don't know. Are we going to be boyfriend, girlfriend? Are we going to make out tonight? Who knows? The night is young. Who knows where this will lead us?
Just the tension, the sexual tension.
My whole teenagedom was just a thread of just sexual tension. Just, you know, that piano wire that's just ready to bang. But it has gotten complicated in work scenarios.
Oh,
you know?
I was going to ask, because that's a place where we mix the genders where otherwise we would never come in contact with them.
Yes, there has been a couple ones that have been a little like, yeah, we were friends, you make a connection, things get a little weird. You have to make your lines known very definitively.
Yes, I could see where you'd have to draw that. And this is different than maybe just somebody inappropriately sexually harassing you, because it's someone you have a personal relationship with at work.
Yeah, not in the harassment zone. This is...
It's not your boss slipping his hand up your thigh being like,
God.
do you want this promotion? I shouldn't say your boss. I should say a boss.
Don't say that. No, totally. It's not in that sexual harassment zone. It's like two people who are friends, and
you spend a lot of time with your coworkers. It's really
God, so
that could
much
be its
time.
whole own episode.
As we usually end these fucking things.
And the good news there, folks, is that Impolite Society isn't going away anytime soon. We're not going to run out of stuff to talk about. So if you want to make sure that you're on board for all the conversations you have to come, be sure to subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Okay, sorry. The sponsors make me put that in. The bosses.
The boss that's slipping his hand up your skirt.
He's like, oh, the way you plug your show makes me horny.
All right, so we are going to get into this. We are going to get into the down and dirty research of cross-sex friendships and the new frontier we are on after this break.
I think it's really funny whoever came up with the name of this whole conundrum. It sounds like it's a village, a quaint village in a beautiful rolling hills of a British Isle. Be like, oh, there's a lot of sexual tension in the village of Crossix.
Crossixshire. Crossix proper.
Yes, Crossix Friendshipshire.
I don't know why I'm throwing Shire in there. Is this Lord of the Rings?
No, just I think that's a British thing. I don't know if you're British. Let us know. Crossix,
I think it's sure.
I don't know. Crossix Friendship Town.
Crossixshire. Crossixshire.
Oh, I like that. That's a new slang word for when you are in the friend. I'm not in the friend zone. I'm in the Crossixshire.
I mean, so that is the technical term for it, right? I think a lot of us try to call it like platonic friendships or whatever the case may be, but like
transgender friendships. No, that's a different word.
Yeah.
It's a different thing.
So when I was doing all the Googling, I was like platonic, male-female relationships, friendships, and cross-sex kept coming up in the academic papers. So that's the kind of the term that I'm going to start adopting as we go through the research that I've done here today.
And I'm going to try my best to say it without sounding tongue-tied. Cross-sex.
Cross-sex. No, cross-sex, not cross-sex.
Cross-sex. Cross-sex, cross-sex, cross-sex. Cross-sex.
Close enough. Okay.
Tell me the facts.
All right. Facts. Here we go. And this is a pretty new question in the history of the human race, right? So this wasn't even a thing to consider until the 18th or 19th century. In the European tradition, men and women had zero reason to be friends. Women, they were thought to be inferior to men in every way possible, especially in intelligence. So why would you want them around for conversation? Men and women, they were separated through most of history. When men and women did get together, it was totally for potential matrimony. After dinner, men went to the smoking room to talk politics, and women, I don't know, what did they do? They played bridge, they needle pointed. I don't know what the hell they did, but they certainly did not go to the room to talk politics with all the men folk.
They were in the kitchen. They were cleaning up dinner, obviously.
I mean, if they were like the wealthy to do, hell no, they weren't. Basically, in those days, women had three roles. They were wife, mother, daughter, or potential wife, potential mother-in-law, or potential daughter. I don't know.
I don't know if you can be a potential daughter. You can maybe be a potential
daughter-in-law.
Yeah, daughters become wives, become mothers. So fathers, be kind to your daughters, too.
So there were a few deviations from this general thought, but not a ton. So before the 1800s, there were some radical mind-bending circles that had some women in them, especially post-Renaissance, but these are really few and far between. And they were only reserved for the super rich and high status, because if you're a wife of middle or low class, you're toiling at home, trying to bake your bread with two babies on your boobies in the communal oven. You don't have time for friends that aren't sitting next to you also trying to bake their bread at the communal oven, right?
You want a friend you can just pass the baby to. They pop it on their boob, and then you get to kneading the bread.
And this socialization between the sexes was really highly regulated. So you were chaperoned and watched over at this local dance or any conversating that did occur. It was totally for one reason only, and that was to find a spouse, and hopefully one that you didn't hate too much.
Not only was this interaction limited and with the sole purpose of finding a potential mate, but it was always very prescripted. It was a step-by-step, detailed, I look at you and you flutter your fan, I put my name on your dance card, and then you come over, and everything meant something, and it was a progression. If I did this, then you did that. And that, with the end result being matrimony. The disappearance of these formal processes and steps is what leads to a lot of the confusion around cross-sex friendships.
You're absolutely right, because things started to change around the 1800s because of this super wild, crazy idea, feminism.
It is. It's still pretty radical to this day. Don't shave, ladies.
Well, that wasn't part of the original first wave feminism. First wave feminism was just like...
About voting? not being beat by your husband. You gotta walk before you can run.
Exactly. And so that was what they were doing. Women began to get property rights. They got educated. They became educators, and they eventually got the right to vote. And fun fact for you, the term girlfriend and boyfriend, these really came into fashion as a term to be like the fellow I'm dating, the girl that I'm dating in the 20s. This was around the time, a little bit after the women were actually getting the vote. And I don't think this is a coincidence because people were finally seeing each other as equal, capable of being friends or equals. So you can't have friendship without mutual respect. Therefore, girlfriends, boyfriends.
Because your friends are equal by putting the opposite gender with friend. It's a little bit more on level playing field. And it was probably one of the first words for someone of the opposite sex who you were interacting with in a romantic way that wasn't a predecessor for marriage.
Yeah, not your fiance, in other words.
Or my betrothed.
Yeah, exactly. And so the idea of the term is that we're not engaged, we're not betrothed. This is something beyond that. And I think the fact that all that terminology evolved at the time when women were really starting to be seen as equals is no coincidence at all.
Yeah, that's no doubt that is tied to the suffragette movement and women getting a little bit more social standing.
And when women started to enter the workforce in a real way in the 30s and the 40s, Rosie the Riveter with her sexy coveralls, all of a sudden you're sharing a break room with a lady. And all of a sudden this opens a whole new world of cross-sex friendships.
So we're really laying a minefield for these men and these women, for all of us today, because we're removing all of the social procedures around interacting with the opposite sex. And then we're throwing us in the same space, in the same break room, and not expecting everything to get super complicated. Tis, 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 humanity. You should know better.
Totally. I mean, it turned everything upside down because it was a super novel idea. You don't only have to be looking for a mate. You could just have someone that you like being around. And I think back then, single men and women were probably still shopping for spouses. That it was the end goal. But you had plenty of people that you were interacting with and mixing with. But there were bound to be a few people but you liked, but you didn't like, you know?
Yes, people who you enjoyed being around or like you were friendly with, you didn't totally despise, who were not quote unquote wife material or husband material or...
Yeah. And so that is the new frontier of friendships. But I'm wondering, Rachel, what do you think these first male-female friendships were like? Do you think that they were hugely different than what we have now?
I don't. Honestly, I think people are friends for the same reasons they are today, where it sounds really pessimistic, where you're getting something out of it. So maybe you're Johnny in the break room talking to that sweet new machinist who joined.
New Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah. And she like laughs at your jokes and it makes you feel good about yourself. Or maybe if you're the Rosie character in this scenario, the guy that you're talking to in the break room is giving you attention and it's affirming your place in society based on the fact that their value is often derived from their relationship to men or their attractiveness or appealingness to men. They're getting the same stuff out of it. And I feel like it's still as exciting today as it probably was in those first break rooms to have these cross-sexual friendships that you know nothing is going to come of, where you can still get that little tippy-tap of emotion or a little tap of excitement and know that you're going to go home to your respective spouses that you're like, oh, you again. But you wouldn't change it. You wouldn't want to come home and not be like, oh, you again. They don't want to shake that up, but they know that they have this little bit of affirmation.
It's a little bit of flourish in your day. You know, you're coming home to Martha or whatever, and you love Martha, but there's this new, young, cute girl at work.
Why she got to be young and cute?
Well, because those are the things that are assigned.
Maybe she's 45 and she's got a good head on her shoulders.
Okay, fine. Martha. Wait, no, that's Martha at home. That is what you have at home.
The trick is that it does not matter. It's just different. That's all that people care about.
That's the real truth, honestly.
Is that this hot, middle-aged, intelligent woman at work's tits look slightly different than Martha's tits. That's all that matters.
So true. But yeah, I think you're probably right. I think that those general inclinations to make contact were the same. I think maybe that they were probably a little more shallow, maybe a little more coded than they are now. I feel like people are a bit more brazen nowadays, that you might openly flirt with people you're friends with, but again, be like, no, this is never going to happen.
Oh, no, I disagree on that one because I think that people have been people the whole time. And I'm sure that there was a lot of flirting going on back then that was less than conspicuous. I think what's different now is that the playing field continues to even out and women have more of a voice in the situation, too. Because I watched Mad Men. I knew what happened in those 1960s offices.
So when men and women started to see each other as equals, men are now expected to actually like their wives like you like a friend. So that was one of the things that came with feminism and elevating women. It wasn't just, oh, you have a wife to have a wife. You actually had to like your wife. You had to respect your wife. You had to agree with your wife on things. And so with that, how do you have a friend then that you also see in this similar way? You like them or you respect them, you agree with them. But how do you have a friend you don't like? Where is that line between friendship but not fuckable? There's something tricky there to navigate, because if you like someone to actually enjoy their company, why wouldn't you also want to enjoy their sexy bits?
That's very true, because back in the day, a marriage was about a lot of things that weren't necessarily love and romantic and sexual interest. It was about station and proximity and who you just wanted to procreate with, I guess. But then as that changed to where your spouse becomes like a partner, and then all of a sudden there's also other people who you're having this kind of relationship with, that definitely does get dicey.
It muddies the waters. And it turns out that some of us are better at this. I like you, but I don't like you than others. And what I mean by that is that women are better at than men. And we've got the data.
I'm interested to hear the data, but I have theories on why this might be.
Well, there's a ton of papers I read on how men are generally more attracted to their female friends than vice versa. I read a research paper that showed that men took sexual attraction into factor before they even started a friendship. Way more than women.
Which that's horrible to think, because you think that quote unquote pretty privilege doesn't exist in the world, but if men won't even talk to you on a platonic basis, if they don't kind of want to have sex with you, then you're not going to have the same access to opportunity.
I know. It's a little devastating. I mean, people like pretty people across the board, like you said, pretty privilege. But guys, seems like their no uggos policy, it extends everywhere.
Yeah, that is devastating.
And there were a couple of studies that I thought were particularly interesting about this cross-sex friendship. So in 2012, researchers at the University of Wisconsin, they brought in 88 pairs of platonic friends, and they asked them some questions about their friend. And these were college students, so we can assume they are in their late teens or early 20s, and they're generally unmarried, right?
Unless they're Mormons.
Wisconsin, I don't think it's a particularly Mormon state, so I think we're in the clear. And these results, they showed that men were much more attracted to their female friends than vice versa. Duh, guys. And men were also more likely to think that their opposite sex friends were attracted to them.
Well, that just sounds like a recipe for disappointment.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, they weren't. The males assumed that the kind of attraction that they experienced with their female friends was mutual. They were blind to the actual level of romantic interest that was felt or shown by their female friend.
So it wasn't even that they were extrapolating. It was just like they were perceiving romantic interest to be shown that was not there.
And on the flip side, these women, they weren't attracted to their male friends. They were completely oblivious to the way that their male friend felt. They felt that their feelings were also mutual. So basically, everyone is looking in a mirror. The men, they were like, I'm sexually attracted to you, so I assume you're sexually attracted to me. The women in their mirror, I don't think of you sexually, so I also assume that you don't think of me sexually. Everyone's looking in their mirror here.
Is it a mirror, or is it they're looking through the lenses of the way they were socialized? Because men are taught all the time, you're great. Okay, I shouldn't say that. I've never been a man. No one's ever told me I'm great.
I told you you're great constantly.
Well, this was supposed to be fishing for you to say it again. So come on.
You're great.
Thank
I love you, Rachel. You're so smart and funny and independent and beautiful.
Man, I feel like a man right now. I feel like I have a penis sprouting from between my legs right now. It's great. But men are socialized very differently. I will say that from a woman's perspective, I'm constantly told that I'm not good enough. So I go into a situation like the one I was in high school. I had no suspicion that any man would be attracted to me in the least bit because A, it was new, and B, it was the 2000s. And I had something called thickness. My tombstone will read, "You're kind of thick for a white girl," quote, the guy at the vending machines that I never spoke to again. The moral of the story is that I did not think that any man would want to have sex with me because I was socialized to believe that I'm not good enough because I will spend more money to become more sexually attractive to men, which is like a total fallacy because who wants to be sexually attractive to men? What a waste.
In another study in 2000 at the University of Texas, they polled a group of about 200 male and females. They asked questions about how they felt about their cross-sex friendships. They found that males and females, they had very different definitions of the costs of these friendships. So what are the upsides? What are the downsides? And men's top cost was that they basically weren't getting laid. They felt that they wasted time and resources that someone who didn't pay off, i.e., they were friend zoned.
And this is just no wonder men end up without friends in their middle age when they think they're owed something for investing time and emotion. It's, oh, I'm not going to hang out with Brian because Brian's not sucking my dick off after the hockey game. It's like sometimes relationships are a give and take. So if you want somebody, and not in a sexual way, you have to be a friend to get a friend, which we can all owe that great saying to Suzette.
No, my mommy. One of the good 3 advice points she gave me. On the kind of flippy side, so women, they found their inability to reciprocate these sexual feelings. That was costly to them. So they felt uncomfortable with this kind of unequal attraction that was going on.
And I blame that on all of those stupid rom-coms that tricked us women into thinking that if a man was nice to us, he was owed our bodies. So it's a feeling like we're not holding up our end of the bargain, which is what the men are feeling like they're being denied. And it's this whole clusterfuck. Nobody is entitled to having sex just by being nice.
But it's not all just poor me, men in our audience, of which we know there are many. When relationships did turn sexual, the men continued to label these women in the just friends category at double the rate of women who had sex with their male friends. The girls were then friend with benefit zoned. So we've got guys that are mad that they're friend zoned, and you got women who are mad that they're friends with benefits.
As sad as this sounds, it's literally that power dynamic switch that we heard about in those offensive 90s rom-coms where women have all the power until they have sex and then they don't have the power after.
Totally. You gave it up. Yeah, that was your one key to the kingdom. And once you gave it, you're fucked.
And then, okay, this is where I think I might share my friend zone story because I can prove that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Because I am married to the person who originally friend zoned me.
What? Dan friend zoned you?
It was a different time, different place, baby cakes, but
how could he? You're so beautiful. Now we're just all like, again, we're pumping each other up.
We're pumping each other's metaphorical dicks up, right? We're like the ads on Pornhub.com. We're going to make your dick bigger and make you more of a man. There you go. But I think it became clear that I liked him. And then he was like, oh, I don't feel that way about you. I like somebody else. And then I just kind of was in the zone, man. I hung out in Crossix Friendshipshire. And I just kind of stayed there. And then eventually, I guess he changed his mind. I don't remember. I made myself available.
You made yourself known and your intentions known for him to act on as he saw appropriate.
Yes. And after I wore a push-up bra. No, just kidding. I don't think I did that.
So all these studies, they revolved around college students. Okay, these are the most sexually active, most sexually virile, but also the easiest people to poll in studies for a $5 Starbucks gift card. So what about adults? Do you think that it gets easier or harder to have cross-sex friendships when you're older and you're in a committed relationship and not seeking a mate? Does it get harder or does it get easier?
I think it gets easier because I think the hormones start to die down a little bit. And I think that your perspective changes. Like we talked about in past episodes about first loves that are very intense. And I don't think that the brain chemicals ever get smaller. Like the feelings you feel for someone when you're first getting into a relationship, or the feelings you feel about wanting to have sex or wanting to be desired by other sex, they don't ever get smaller. Your world just gets bigger around it. So it's easier to contextualize that and say, you know what? Somebody that I enjoy hanging out with doesn't come around every second of the day. It doesn't happen often. So I'm going to enjoy this relationship for what it is, which is somebody who I really enjoy, as opposed to being like, oh, girl paying attention to me. I must bone.
I think that, I agree with you in that it gets easier to contextualize those feelings, but it gets a little harder in the fact that when you're in a committed relationship, it makes that fall a lot farther. So if things were to go catawampus in a relationship and things got lopsided when you're spending less time with your committed person and more time with your friend, things have a very different repercussion there. It's much more serious and a lot harder to resurface.
And I think that plays into the same thing I was saying, where your world is bigger. Your relationship with your significant other has more weight to it. There's a lot more at stake. You might have kids and a family and a lot more commitments, like a mortgage or like a legally binding contract that keeps you together. All these things. In one way, it makes it easier to be friends with members of the opposite sex, but it makes those intense cross-sexual friendships way more complicated because there's all these other big, important things at work.
Cross-sex friendships, I think they're valuable for several reasons. So you get a greater understanding of the opposite sex, how they think, how they feel, how they behave. And I think this is a really important when you're younger. So in high school, I had a ton of male friends. Even in early college, you have these friendships and they're really important, I think, because you're still figuring out how this male-female thing works, right? Like where you fit in, how they think, how men and women relate to one another, whether it's through sexual attraction or not through sexual attraction. It's this experiment. And men, they're also able to experience more emotional intimacy with women than they do with their male friendships. And this goes across the board, whether it's in teenagedom, college, or adulthood. And that's especially true if they're single, right? So if they don't have someone to be emotionally intimate with their male friends, they can be emotionally intimate with the female friends in their lives. So both male and females have this benefit to cross-sex friendships. And they both get a self-esteem boost out of it. Like you said at the beginning, it was like Rosie the Riveter is like, ooh, people think that I'm attractive. And the married guy is like, ooh, people other than my wife can think that I'm funny and interesting. There is a benefit that comes out of it from both sides.
And I think that's really interesting that you talk about men having more emotionally intimate relationships with women. It's like the flip of what we talk about as far as sexual, right? Where two men together is hypersexualized. A man and a woman is like regular sexualized. But you flip that and reverse it with emotional intimacy, where a man-to-man relationship, like my husband has friends and I don't think they know anything about each other, really. And then, so men are tapping into that kind of because of how we're socialized, and men are not told to be that way. So then I think women kind of pull it out of them, or, you know, they just feel more comfortable because they think that's a more womanly thing to do.
I mean, I know from my experience, I think I pull it out of people.
And that is why these relationships, these cross-sexual relationships, can be detrimental to romantic relationships when you start to move that emotional connection from your significant other to a cross-sexual friend.
I mean, with that in mind, so is it really possible to have a friendship without sex coming into play? So if you're having this more intentional emotional connection with somebody outside of your primary partner, is that really possible? And I think that depends on who you ask. I think we're both coming to this as older, I hate to say it, but older women.
I'm a Gen Z cusper. Who are you talking to? Older.
Whatever. Okay. I'm a millennial / Gen Xer. But I'm saying we're both women who are in committed marital relationships.
Yes, our sexual prime is behind us.
Precisely.
Until you get to your dirty 30s.
Well, I'm even past my dirty 30s. But I'm just saying that we come to this with
a maturity and a je ne sais quoi, in a way, a wisdom of the world.
In that we have committed relationships, so that's how we're viewing this male-female thing now. And what I found in the research is that it depends on who you ask. A study in 2009, they found that 51% of participants had engaged in sexual contact with a cross-sex friend at least once.
Oh, no.
That's a lot, guys. 51%.
That's like a coin's toss.
And another study in 2000 by the University of Athens, and they said that 26% had sex with a friend. So this study was interesting because it really dug into the challenges of sexual attraction in a friendship. So men and women, they both saw the potential for sexual feelings as a detriment to the relationship. They associated these feelings with the negative aspects of a romantic relationship. So exclusivity, possessiveness, inauthenticity. And I think that was a big one because when you aren't trying to impress someone, you're able to really be who you are. And that's what a friendship is. But if you're trying to put your best foot forward, like we do when we're attracted to someone, we want them to like us. We aren't able to be who we are. We're putting on a facade.
In other words, we're fronting. We're fronting on them.
Exactly. That's all dating is. Fronting until you can hook them enough to get them to like you, to show them your more real parts. And in that 26% that did have sexual contact with a friend in this study, the researchers really dug into that end result, like what happened to the friendship. And what they found was only 16% of these cases, the friendship was terminated. But in 22%, it became a romantic relationship. So they're living that RomCom dream.
Or they're just, one of them is putting up with the other one because it's like, it's easier than ending a friendship.
But in 61% of the cases, the friendship prevailed. So something happened. There was some sort of night going on. But at the end, they were like, you know what? We're just better as friends. So I thought that was a really interesting study.
When I contextualize it, if it's after the sexual contact, I'm sure there's a good chunk of guys who are like, yeah, we're still friends, but they're still holding out for that slightly hope. Or it's women who are like, yeah, we had sex, but I totally just think we're friends still. It's just like, I feel like that 61%, there might be some mental gymnastics going on there.
You're probably not wrong. But so back to that 2009 study that said that 51% banged a friend, they had that kind of similar rosy outlook. So 67% of those who partook in that midnight dalliances, they said that it increased their friendship quality. And 56% said that the friendship did not become romantic. They explored it. They had some fun. They continued to just be friends.
I mean, that's insane.
Okay, I kind of agree on that. It did seem a little bit too rosy.
I mean, sex makes relationships complicated with just two people involved. I seriously doubt that the vast majority of friends who end up banging are going to be all like, it was what it was. And, we're closer because of it. That's just insane to me. I don't buy it. I don't buy that for a second.
But let's take all of it with a grain of salt. And let's say, though, that it doesn't kill a relationship necessarily. Maybe not in 67% of the time. But just because things dipped into where it wasn't supposed to be doesn't always mean that the friendship is doomed. Maybe that's what we can take from it. What do you think?
So this whole piece, right, that 51% of these friendships, they had sex, and 67 of them think that they're closer, and that it's this beautiful thing that made them better, and that there's no hurt feelings, there's no complication involved. Like, what does this say in regards to our growing societal propensity for same-sex relationships when more people are open to it? Is this saying that I'm already like trying to be wary of leading the men in my life on? Is this just gonna, this kumbaya, all this sex, and it's making everybody happier? I'm going to take your camp on this one. It was like, where do we draw the line then? Should we be having sex with everyone? Should we go full bonobo?
That's what I was thinking.
Over 66% of the time, we're going to come out closer. That's Sorry, that's not horrifying. It
is horrifying. Don't lie.
I don't want to have any more sex than I'm having now.
All right, well, Rachel, you kind of took a negative view on my good news. That was supposed to be the good news.
Yeah, because these are single people. They're probably a little hornier than you and I. Your friend can scratch your back and scratch your itch for you without it ruining your friendship.
Yeah, and that can be a good thing. The bad news is that a study from the University of Boulder, Colorado in 2018 showed that almost 54% of people who had extramarital affairs did so with a close friend.
I think that's the accumulation of all the points that we talked about, where cross-sexual friendships have the ability to dip into different emotional things and validating ourselves and creating more emotional intimacy than we would normally get, or at least a different kind of emotional intimacy that we would get with our same-sex friendships. And then that just builds. Nobody's surprised that these extramarital affairs start as friendships.
Not at all. I'm not surprised by that.
And it's also not necessarily like an intentional thing, like, oh, I'm going to be friends with this person and then I'm going to lead to an affair. It's kind of like that frog. It's a slow boil. Suddenly the intimacy builds and builds and builds to the point where you're just like, oh, the romantic feelings come over you, or you're put in a situation where you're apparently like 51% of people accidentally have sex with a friend.
So we've got some good news. We got some bad news on the friendship front, but there's been quite the journey of cross-sex friendship in modern society. But many tribal societies still don't have a platonic male-female relationship between people that are of reproductive age. And evolutionary biology would say that this makes perfect sense. Two people who are not related and they're of mating age, they will always see one another as a potential mate. Do you think that that's true, Rachel?
No, I don't think that's true. I think it's 100% of how we're socialized. Because, okay, I realize that you said two non-related people, but that related piece is a social construct.
To a point. I think that brothers and sisters, I think that's pretty natural, but I think like cousins, that's less natural because they're like removed. But brothers and sisters, like if you're playing in the nursery together, I think that's pretty well firmly cemented as like, this is not a sexual partner. We like watched each other squirt milk out of our nose and shit each other's diapers.
Well, some people will have friends like that they end up marrying, and we're all supposed to act like that's a cute story. So I think that this relation thing is a social construct, right? Because you look at animals do not give a fuck.
Do they not? Like they don't give a fuck if they fuck their sister?
No.
I could have sworn that was like a thing in the animal kingdom.
No. My friend, their parents had purebred golden retrievers growing up, and they showed them. They didn't breed them, but they showed them. And when the girl dog was in heat, they had to lock her in a kennel. Otherwise, her brother that was also in the house would breed her.
Woof.
And they also crossbreed them.
Literally.
I know, woof, 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 bow, wow. But that's actually a literal breeding technique within the purebred dog world is that's called inbreeding to cement specific genetic traits. So never have a purebred dog because it's inbred. Anyway, so I don't think that that's natural. It's 100% social. So also, if you put two kids together and raise them side by side, if they're raised as brother and sister, I don't think that it's the DNA. There's like some inherent being piece that's like, oh, you're my brother, I'm not going to want to have sex with you, because you could raise two people who aren't genetically related side by side and they grow up as siblings and still feel that way towards each other. It's a social construct, in my opinion. So I believe that it is possible to put that social construct in other scenarios. I just think that we're so far from that in our world now that we can't help but think that everybody either wants to fuck us or that we want to fuck them.
That's an interesting thought. Do you think it's something about our hyper-sexualized society or something about our me society, or maybe a little bit of both?
No, I think it's because of our misogyny that we sexualize women. And I think that's why men are attracted to their female friends, but female friends aren't attracted to men. It's because our society paints this picture that women are for sex. Women are sexual items, physically objects. We put plastic in our tits to be more attractive. So the female body is sexualized to the point where you can't just separate women.
If you have a tit, it's for sale, basically.
Well, yeah, we can't separate the idea of being a woman from being a sex object. So a woman can go into a friendship with a man because they like his personality. And even if a guy likes the personality of a female, she's still a female, so she therefore must be for sex. I don't know if that's how humans are naturally inclined to be, or if that is the product of our society going back to the beginning of time. But I do think that that's what makes this, we're more equal in our day-to-day life now, but we're still not equal in the fact that there are millennia of women being that for men. So it's really hard for men to shake that perception, in my opinion.
Or really hard for women to shake that as also being that. So thinking that is what I should be to people. That is how I relate to people.
Yeah, and that story I told about the guy in high school my friend in high school who wrote me a poem, I felt guilty. I felt like I did something wrong because...
That's very universal.
Yes, because it was my fault that he felt that way and I didn't reciprocate.
That's what the research shows. Women show that as costly. They feel bad. So the research backs you up on that.
Which really, no one should ever feel bad about
not
wanting to have sex with anybody. You asked me if I think it's possible. I think that it is in a vacuum, but in the way that our society has evolved for thousands and thousands of years, it's not happening anytime soon. It's not going to be perfect anytime soon. That gender masking unitard, even if it happens, it's not going to change the Cliff Notes versions of relationships.
Which is that men always want to fuck.
That the female body is for having sex with. And that's why I think you hear so much about female gender or female sexual fluidity. I've seen a lot on TikTok that a lot of women are coming out as homosexual or as bi recently. Uh-huh. To me, it seems easier for women to be sexually attracted to female bodies because female bodies are so heavily sexualized. So it comes down to, it's not even just our cross-sexual friendships. Our bodies are so sexualized that it's not even just our male friends who might see us that way, but it's our female friends as well. And to me, this makes it 10 times more complicated because we still feel the guilt. It doesn't matter if it's Sally or Sam who wants to have sex with you and you don't reciprocate. I was trying to deflect one piece over here and now I got to deflect two pieces. And I get it. That might just be my penis that Laura inflated for me, thinking that all these people want to have sex with me. But still, it's in a situation like nobody wants to be the person who's like, sorry, but no thank you.
Well, I think that's interesting because as we think about the future in the next 50, 100, 200 years about how gender is becoming much more fluid and like a non-issue. Does that mean then that we're going to have this coming from both sides? Like, it doesn't matter if it's a cross-sex friendship, whether you're having friendships with males or females, it has this potential to become sexual. So you're, like you said, you're really not going to have a safe space. You're not going to have your safe female friendships. You're going to have to be on the defensive from all sides.
Yeah, which I don't know if defensive is the right word, but you're going to be more stingy with your emotional intimacy because you don't want to be, quote unquote, leading someone on. Because right now, I know my female friends don't want to bang me. So
No,
I can be friends.
I don't. I like you, but I don't want to bang you.
Really? You can't resist all this? Again, that's my dick that you inflated for me. I think it's going to impact friendships as a whole and maybe make people more isolated, which is a trend that we're on.
And yeah, that's my thought as well, is that that's sad. That if you don't have that safe space of my female friendships, because I'm a female, or a male, his male friendships, that he can really cut loose and be very authentic, that means that you can't really cut loose no matter who you're with. And that's sad and depressing and, like you said, isolating.
But no, I agree. And usually I'm more like pro you do you, but maybe this is my prudeness coming out where it's just, I don't think I want to live in a world where anybody might want to fuck me at any given moment and have that as their ulterior motive.
That's what I mean when I said defensiveness. I feel like with being a female, like with a male relationship, you know that might be always on the table. So you're kind of
guarded.
Yeah, being like, oh, I don't want to encourage that. But if you're like that with everyone you're with,
seems exhausting.
Yes, it sounds so tiring.
And again, I should say that it's not, I said like, oh, everybody wants to fuck me. Like, I think everybody wants to fuck me. But it's more like, I don't want to hurt somebody else by giving them the wrong impression.
Nobody wants to hurt other people. That's just generally not fun.
So it sounds like I'm being super ego inflated, but it's more along the lines of like, I don't want to be a bad person. I don't want to be a bad person to somebody else who I might be giving the wrong impression to. I don't want to cross a boundary with my significant other. It just definitely makes everything more complicated. Oh my God. Is this exactly where I said we were going to land when we started this episode? It's an area of gray. Humanity is complicated.
And then here we are. We're back to the rude question. Can men and women be friends without things getting weird?
I've seen it done. I have. So I have to believe.
I have too.
That it can happen. I think there needs to be a line in the sand. This is going to sound super bad. Like a family member, or maybe they're so far on the sexual attractiveness spectrum that nobody will look at it and assume that they are in a romantic relationship.
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say that it is possible, but that line in the sand maybe isn't family membership or extreme uggoness. I'm going to say that line in the sand is somewhere in the terms of communication. I think it's possible, but it's not as clear cut as everyone says it is, whether it's on the yes, they're absolutely going to fuck, or no, they're absolutely not going to fuck. You're so heteronormative. There's nature that's stacked against us, or like Rachel said, maybe socialization that's stacked against us, but we can't ignore the realities of that situation. I think we're not as evolved as we think we are, so we have to be on guard for these potential fallouts and use that age-old tool, the one not quite as old as our mating instincts, but still an oldie but a goodie, and that is communication, right? That's how humans built these mass societies and the internet and all this kind of shit. It's because we are good at communicating. So if we use that, if we maybe have some impolite conversations with the people that we're friends with, we can be honest about this and say, I have a significant other, I'm not interested. Or if you don't have a significant other, I am not looking for a partner in you, and being very upfront at the beginning of these relationships that men and women hopefully can connect in a platonic way.
Yeah, and I think that, again, the idealist versus the realist, right? There's so many areas of gray. And at the same time, this communication, these lines in the sand, they take a little bit of the sexiness and out of the fun of some
Totally.
of
Maybe that's exactly the point.
platonic-
Take the sexiness out of it.
Is that what you want, Laura? Take a little bit of the sexiness and the fun out of the situation?
Yeah, sure.
Dirty eyes. So I guess the moral of that was some people like living in the gray area because it does provide that little dose of dopamine. It does provide that little bit of excitement.
That thrill. Yeah.
So it's hard to put the clear, like, cut boundaries around it. And I guess this is just part of the messy sport of being a human.
Like we said, it's really kind of new. So it's less than 100 years into men and women having relationships that don't necessarily end in marriage. So we're still navigating it. I feel like we have a tendency to think that anything in the last like 20 years is like recent history. And it's like, when you look at the totality of human existence, 100 years is a blink. And we have to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of things that we're still working on 100 years in, and that it's still messy, and that's okay. We're just all doing the best that we can.
And that bit of messiness also adds a little bit of spice to life. And you know what? As long as you're not intentionally hurting people, sometimes it is what it is.
I would agree with that. And so I think that's kind of where we're falling is
the idealist and the pessimist, they exist together. In a perfect world, men and women can be friends, but considering all of the socialization, like you said, the newness and how we view women, how we view men, and emotional intimacy, how men and women have interacted with each other for millennia, it's not a perfect system yet, but we're getting better at it.
No, I think that you nailed it, that we're getting better at it time and time again. But maybe then we're editing in this new dimension of, nope, it's not just the cross-sex friendships you got to worry about. It's the same-sex friendships that you have to worry about. I don't know, man. History is complicated. Life is complicated. Can women be friends? I don't know. That's where we're going to end it.
The moral of the story is, ladies, if you have a friend, just have sex with them, because in 67% of the time, it's going to end up okay anyway. You're welcome, fellas.
If you're a college student, anyway.
If you're all going to go your separate ways in 2.5 years.
Yeah, who gives a fuck? Fuck everybody. Who cares?
Yes.
But if you're a grown adult and in the office with your,
hey, there's
office
other jobs.
friends,
This is a great
maybe
resignation.
don't.
There's a war on talent.
I'm fucking everybody and I quit. The Great Resignation 2020.
Everybody's fucked. So might as well get fucked.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Literally, you're cool. I'm out.
Bye. Dick drop.
Mic
No,
drop.
I said dick drop.
Oh, dick drop. There you go. That's even better.
Boom.
I think that's it. I think we're done. Who knows, guys? We're all in a gray area here. Let us know what you think. Reach out to us. We are on all of the socials. We are on the Facebook. We're on the Twitter. We're on the TikTok. We're on the Instagram. And you can always reach us at root@impolitesocietypodcast.com to send us your root questions, or let us just know what you think. Tell us your gross, ugly stories about friendships that have gone horribly wrong.
Oh, yes.
We want to hear them.
Yes, that would be actually very entertaining. So I would
Juicy.
love to hear it. I shared mine, both that ended poorly and that ended well.
Oh my God. I would love to have like a listener section at the end of each podcast where we tell stories from people who email us. Make that happen, guys.
Yeah, send us your stuff. We'll share it. And of course, if you liked what you heard today, we ask that you in turn share this show with your friends. If you've liked what you heard today, this is how indie podcasts grow, by word of mouth. So recommendations are the lifeblood of Impolite Society. So give us a little bit of life, friend. Send it to your Cross-Shire friends.
Your Cross-Shire friends.
Or ladies, send this to a guy in your life who you're like, I need you to take a hint.
I love you like a brother. Listen to this podcast.
Yep, exactly. And if I can do that for one woman in the world, I have lived my calling.
All right, guys, I think that's the drums playing us out here today. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us on this cross-sex friendship shire journey.
I wrote all this never knowing how hard cross sex was to say until I actually had to say it.